Batman Arkham Asylum is now 14 years old. So, I thought, what a better thing to do than look back and see what made this game so revolutionary. And right off the bat, I think that Rocksteady nailed the story for their first installment. The story is just so simple. It's Joker running loose through the asylum and you have to stop him. I think it could have been really easy for Rocksteady to mess up the story and make it feel so cramped together. Especially because there are a lot of Batman's rogues gallery in this game. And in my opinion, Batman has the most famous rogues gallery in all of comics, so you kind of have to make these characters spot on. The only hero that I can think that maybe rivals him with recognizable villains is Spider-Man, but that's a debate for a different day. And I think that Rocksteady chose the perfect villains to have Batman go up against in the environment that you're put in. It would feel really weird, in my opinion, if you were fighting Firefly on such a small island. Your main bosses are Joker, Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn, Bane, Scarecrow, and Killer Croc. Zsasz and Riddler are there too, but Zsasz is treated as a henchman with a name, and Riddler is only there so you can do something after you beat the main story. I think that this is the perfect amount of villains because it doesn't feel like you're overwhelmed and everybody knows who they are. Well, maybe not Zsasz, but yeah, he's kind of obscure. I'm also glad that Rocksteady looked at its plate, realized it had too many things going on, and decided to cut more of the obscure characters. Not as many people know who Mad Hatter is, so he was cut from the game. Yeah, Mad Hatter was originally going to be in Arkham Asylum with a giant hedge maze that would have moved around you as you went through it. Yes, this sounds cool, but it feels really rushed because I don't know how he would have fit into the story, because each villain they choose has a big impact on the story, except for Riddler. But once again, he's in the game, so you have something to do once you're done, and so you can get all the collectibles. Other than your main villains, you have your henchmen, and they consist of inmates from around the island. Rocksteady also nailed most of the designs for the villains. The only one that I don't really enjoy is Bane, but then again, he's barely in the game, so I can overlook this. Some of the best designs, in my opinion, though, are Killer Croc and Scarecrow. They went all out on these guys, and you can just tell, just by looking at them. Another really interesting thing that Rocksteady did was put death screens in for when you die. And when I think of death screens, this franchise is the first franchise that I think of. They also sound amazing, especially Killer Croc. He just sounds so menacing, and I think this game might have been the game that made me fall in love with Killer Croc.
I will enjoy feasting on your bones.
Whenever I see him in something, I just get so excited because he's great. He's now in my top 3 Batman villains of all time, just behind Mr. Freeze and Deathstroke. Some of the best parts of superhero games is the combat, and the best thing about combat in Arkham Asylum is that it's simple. You have your attack button, your block button, your dodge button, and your stun button. And then eventually with upgrades, you get your combo buttons, one being a finisher and the other being a throw. Enemies also have bright blue action marks above their head when they're attacking, making it easy for newcomers to know when to block. You won't see a lot of it in my footage, but that's just because I was playing on hard mode, and if you play on hard mode, then it gets rid of it. It's basically this game's version of New Game Plus. I think it could have been really easy for Rocksteady to overwhelm with their first game, but they didn't. Especially when you hear that originally the combat was going to be rhythm-based, and that sounds terrible. Especially for 2009, and I'm really glad that they realized you should not do rhythm-based combat in a Batman game. The only main problem with the combat is that it hasn't aged very well, especially having played the other games in the franchise and seeing how good this combat will eventually get. For example, the combat does a really weird thing sometimes where it will lock onto an enemy across the room, letting you bounce around it like an ADHD kid not on his meds. Sometimes it just doesn't. And this makes holding onto a combo really difficult and frustrating. And another problem I had quite often is that buttons just would not do what they were supposed to do, which resulted in me getting hit or sometimes dying. This gets even worse when they start introducing different types of enemies because their attacks usually do more damage. My final big problem with the combat is that sometimes your fighting animations go by really fast, and sometimes it takes forever, which usually results in you getting hit. The other main form of combat in the Arkham series is stealth combat, and I think, just like normal combat, they did a great job at not overwhelming the player too much. They do this by keeping it the same for most of the game. They do eventually throw in suicide collars that alert enemies to where their fallen partners are, but by that point it's late enough in the game where you get the idea of what you're supposed to do. Another problem I do have with the game, though, is I don't understand why half of my gadgets have to be different versions of batarangs. If you ask me, they should have taken out the multi-batarang or just have it as some sort of upgrade for the normal batarang where you can switch between 1, 2, and 3, and that would have worked perfectly in my opinion. It baffles me that Batman doesn't get smoke bombs in this game. But overall, I would say that Rocksteady did a great job by making the combat simple while still having it be fun. One of the biggest problems in Arkham Asylum for me are the boss fights. In my opinion, they're the weakest part of the game, and that really hurts me because the ones that they do right are like top 10, but the ones that they do wrong are like some of my least favorite parts of this game. For example, I think Bane's boss fight is really underwhelming because it's essentially a harder Titan thug that can heal, which doesn't really make all that much of a difference, and I didn't even know he could heal until I played through it on this playthrough because normally you take him out so quickly, but that he only heals if you let him dick around for a while, so I guess that might be on me. Another boss fight that I found to be okay was Poison Ivy. I might get hate for this, but I just felt it to be underwhelming too, just because all you do is throw batarangs at her and then eventually blow her up with explosive gel. It's okay. However, Rocksteady makes up for these okay and bad boss fights with some great ones in the form of Killer Croc and Scarecrow. Scarecrow gets these really dope fear segments where Batman trips on bath salts and sees this.
My little bat, you're in my world now.
Confession time, I used to think that Scarecrow's boss fights were terrible and dumb, and now I don't know what I was thinking. So, go easy on me. I was a dumb kid at the time who thought Attack of the Clones was the best Star Wars movie, so not all of his screws were right up there. Scarecrow also gets the best build-up to all of his boss fights because rather than you seeing a cutscene and you're in the boss fight, Scarecrow infects you with this fear toxin, and slowly the environment will start to change, or Batman's eyes will start to glow, or they'll make you think that your game has crashed and that you have to start over from the beginning. Still to this day, that is a legendary move by Rocksteady, and whoever thought of that should get a raise. Killer Croc's boss fight is great because you have to make as little noise as possible, and gives us our first fully stealth boss fight, which is really smart too. They keep winning me over with these unique ideas on how to do boss fights. But, Killer Croc isn't completely useless. He does pop out of the water every now and then to say hi, or to see if you like the Mets, or hell, maybe he wants to know if your car's extended warranty has expired. Another thing Croc will do is he'll start to break the wooden boards underneath you, and that just is really cool as well, because it provides for a really cool slow pace to fast pace momentum instantaneously, and you really just don't see a lot of that now these days. Another thing Rocksteady does great with the boss fights are the environment that it takes place in, because each boss fight kind of has this own feel, like you would actually find them in Gotham City in these locations. For example, Killer Croc gets the sewers because nobody cares about him, Poison Ivy gets the garden because plants, and Scarecrow gets New Jersey because it's hell. However, though, there is one more boss fight in this game, and I think that on paper it should have been great, but just the fact that this is how they played it out kind of taints the whole boss fight system in this game, and that is Titan Joker, that he is stupidly easy for a final boss. He does not feel like he should have ended this game like this. In my opinion, they should have done something like Bane in Arkham Origins, where you beat him once normally, and then you beat him when he's all steroided up. This would have provided a really cool 3-part action system for the final boss fight, and really gave us something to look forward to while replaying. Because, to be completely honest, once I'm done with Killer Croc's boss fight, I'm really not in this game anymore, just because I know that the Titan Joker fight is next, and it just doesn't live up to all the hype. Seeing as I just talked about the worst part of the game, I think it's time we talk about the best part of the game in my opinion, and that is the environment. The asylum itself serves as such an interesting location for the game to take place, because not only is Arkham Asylum such a famous location in of itself, but it also is just so haunting to walk through. Especially the medical center, intensive treatment, the holding cells, and the caves. They looked so menacing, and I keep trying to piece together who the real monsters are here. If it's the ones who keep them behind the cages, or the ones who are in the cages for what they've done. Because Be completely honest, some of these devices just look like straight torture devices, and I would find them in like a prisoner of war camp, not in an asylum. I also love the sound that they give the asylum. They give it this nice little jingle, and whenever you hear it, it's just automatically recognizable, and all of my memories kind of start flashing back when I hear it of walking through the haunted halls of this asylum.
Intensive treatment, lower floors, are now at level red alpha.
I also love how there's a secret room in this game that Rocksteady themselves had to reveal years later after the game came out, hinting towards Arkham City. It just really does put the bow on the present for me. Now, I want to talk about something very important for doing a Batman game, and that is, you have to get Batman right. And Rocksteady did an amazing job once again with the character. First off, they brought back Kevin Conroy to voice Batman.
Warden, something's not right. I'm going with him.
And in my opinion, Kevin Conroy is the best version of Batman of all time. Live action included. He just beats everything. Also, rest in peace, Kevin. You're an angel now. Kevin does an amazing job, and previously had experience voicing him in Batman the Animated Series. I also love how over the course of this game, Batman's suit slowly becomes more torn apart, and it's just a really nice small detail. But Batman is nothing without the Joker, and once again, they pulled from Batman the Animated Series and got Mark Hamill to play him, aka Luke Skywalker. Mark Hamill is also my favorite version of the Joker because he gives such an electric performance and is always changing how the Joker laughs depending on his mood. The final thing they got from the animated series was Arlene Sorkins to reprise her role as Harley Quinn.
Hey, hands off the merchandise! That's my party list!
Quiet. Why the smiles next to certain names?
You're the detective, you tell me!
And if you can't tell, I am a huge Batman the Animated Series fan. It is actually my favorite TV show of all time. The only two shows that I would say come close, but definitely don't beat it, are Star Wars The Clone Wars and a regular show. Those are elite shows, and you can definitely expect videos on them sometime soon. The last thing that I want to talk about are the collectibles, because Rocksteady did a great job with the collectibles in Arkham Asylum, because they're just so cool, and they provide further insight on Batman's rogues gallery. My favorite thing to collect out of everything, though, were definitely the character bios, because they go over such obscure Batman villains like Humpty Dumpty and Prometheus, or Tweedledee and Tweedledum. I bet not many people knew who the Great White Shark was if you didn't read the comics, and I'm sure even some die-hard comics fans didn't really know who he was. Other collectibles include character trophies, challenge maps, and interviews with the patients of Arkham. The character trophies show you the amazing character models up close so you can see these great designs and just really admire how much work Rocksteady put into these amazing designs. The challenge maps either let you do combat or stealth and also kind of just act for more things that you can do once you finish the game. In the challenge maps, you can either play as Batman, Armored Batman, or the Joker. And the cool thing about the Joker is he's a completely unique character, having more of a loud playstyle rather than Batman's stealthy playstyle. And he even gets a gun. The final collectibles are the patient interviews, and these provide some really interesting backstories for our main villains in the game. I especially love the Harley Quinn tapes because they're almost entirely ripped out of Batman the Animated Series, Mad Love. And once again, Batman the Animated Series is my favorite TV show of all time. I did think the Chronicles of Arkham were my least favorite to collect, but then again, they don't really feel like collectibles. They feel more like a shitty side quest, if anything. In conclusion, Arkham Asylum was a revolutionary game when it came out, winning Game of the Year, and I think that is just so cool, because there had been Batman games before, but they were nothing like this, an actual open-world Batman game where you felt like Batman. This game revolutionized the superhero genre in gaming. I mean, this is the game the Avengers game wishes it could be. This is the game that inspired Insomniac to make Spider-Man 9 years later. Game is just so iconic that whenever a new superhero game comes out, people automatically compare them to the Arkham franchise. And this game started it all. So, with that, I'm going to give Batman Arkham Asylum a 9 out of 10.